Welcome to the Dreamers Podcast. I'm your host, Annie's Wealth, and I am very excited for today's episode with the millionaire mentor, Cedric Nash. Cedric is an entrepreneur and investor who educates, inspires, and motivates wealth building in the Black community. He is the founder of the Black Wealth Summit, an annual event, and also the author of Why Should White Guys Have All the Wealth? Cedric has been an investor since the early 90s, and he's been the recipient of the Chamber of Commerce Entrepreneur of the Year Award, Inc. Magazine 100 Fastest Growing Inner City Firms, so many other accolades. And I am just very happy that he decided to come to the show today to share his story, his knowledge with us all. All right, here is Cedric Nash. Cedric Nash, welcome to the Dreamers Podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So for people who might have not heard about you before, can you please share a little bit about you and what you do?
Yep. My name is Cedric Nash, and I'm the president and CEO of Oakland Consulting, founder of the Black Wealth Summit. Been an entrepreneur for over 25 years. And over those 25 years, I've taken my profits and invested in real estate, invested in private equity, and I've developed a knack and an understanding for how to invest and how to build wealth. Very passionate about Black wealth, and I wake up every day figuring out how I can make my community richer and richer, and happy to be here today.
Earlier, you shared that you started investing in the 80s, right? You've been at this for, 30 plus years?
Yes, and I think I misspoke. It was actually 93 when it happened. When my grandmother died, it was 1993. Yeah, my grandmother died, amazing woman. She lived in New York, and she worked at a cleaner's, and she made $200 a month. But yet she saved $43,000 by the time of her death and paid off her house, in which she paid $25,000 for. I have a copy of her deed. So when she passed, she had $43,000. $13,000 was for her funeral and $30,000 was for her grandkids. So my brother and my sister and I all got $10,000. I opened up a Charles Schwab account, and I turned that $10,000 into millions, operating basic principles. And my grandmother was amazing because she had an 8th grade education and never took a financial literacy class, never paid for anybody's seminar. And she didn't have to know that she needed to live below her means and that she needed to basically save and take care of her responsibilities. She could have taken some wealth literacy classes, which I distinguished between financial literacy, where she could have turned that 43 million into 430,000. But she did an incredible job with an 8th grade education and no knowledge about investing.
I'm sure later on we'll get into some of the principles that you applied, right? Because people like numbers. Do you mind sharing your net worth with the Dream?
I like sharing my exact net worth, but I'm between the $50 and the $100 million range. That's where I am.
Thank you for sharing. I want to take it back though. Can you share an early money memory that you have? I'm really looking to understand how one specific event shaped your views around money growing up.
I think the one thing that really shaped my mind was when I was finishing college. Before graduating college, I was content with being just financially mediocre. Just wanted a good job, nice car, nice place to live, and to be comfortable. And then my ex-wife, who was my college sweetheart, lived in Southern California. And so I would visit down there. I had a summer job there. And actually her ex-boyfriend from high school ended up being one of my best friends. And his name was Juan Walker, and he's no longer with us. And just being around Juan and seeing how people lived in LA, it developed a thirst to want a better life, a more fruitful life. And so it gave me that exposure. Then I started setting different sites about building wealth. However, I didn't go about it the way that Juan did, because Juan was very involved, knew the mayor, Mayor Bradley at the time, was very connected in real estate. And look, mind you, we were in our 20s. We were 25-year-old young guys, but he was just very impactful and influential in the LA area, buying office buildings, creating office buildings. It created a thirst for me to want to do the same thing. However, I was not willing to go borrow money for it. I was not willing to put myself at risk, at which Juan was. But I still was determined that I was going to get there one day. So that's one fond memory. It goes to the fact that sometimes when you're exposed to certain things, it has an impact on your desire to want it and your desire to want to go after it, and can sometimes be that internal fuel to get you there.
So who are the people who had the most impact in you becoming who you are today?
I like to tell people that I constantly collect mentors all throughout my life. There are 4 particular mentors that were early in my life that shaped my mindset around money. 2 were in my hometown. I write about them in my book. One is Mr. Al Glover. He's been in my life since high school. Probably the reason why I pledged Alpha Phi Alpha. He pinned me when I was an officer, became an officer in the United States Army. The other one is a white man by the name of Gus Martin, who when I was 11th grade, I met him and he was an engineer, worked for my uncle AJ, who worked for a very wealthy man in Carmel Valley. And got exposed to Gus, and Gus made me feel like I was brilliant. even though I was just a regular kid. And then I ran into Taylor, who's a family friend who quietly owned land in wine country that he would lease his land out to the big wineries. He was an African-American man that owned 50-unit apartment buildings, had houses all over the place, and he had an ornamental horticulture company. He was a low-key guy, and he was the epitome of the millionaire next door. And the funny part is he lives in the same house today. So these guys shaped my mindset around building wealth. And then finally, Mr. Bruce, Gilbert D. Bruce, when I was in college, my last year in college, these are stories that you people are going to hear about in my book. I decided to live in the basement with Mr. Bruce in my last year as opposed to living with my frat brother because I wanted to graduate. But Mr. Bruce owned a sandwich shop, apartment houses, and he had this basement apartment. I just wanted to be near him. And so living with Mr. Bruce, a day in the life of Mr. Bruce is I wake up and I see him laying in the bed, smoking a cigarette in one hand, Wall Street Journal in the other hand, news talk radio going on. There's also some kind of money talk show on the TV going on. You're like, what in the world? All this ruckus is going on. He was really all in with investing. Mr. Bruce never told me, Cedric, you need to do this, you need to invest in that, or you need to read that. Just being around him influenced me to want to know more. I started reading books. The first book I read was How to Be Your Own Stockbroker by Charles Schwab. And I just kept reading books upon books in my last year in college around investing. And it increased my thirst to want to do the same thing. And that was during the same time that I was connecting with Juan on my summer jobs down in Los Angeles. So that all merged and really inspired me to want to create a plan. And so 2 days before graduating, I wrote a plan on a yellow piece of paper that I still have today. And I put that piece of paper in my book about how I was going to turn my regular job into millions. And that's what happened. 7 years later, I became a millionaire by the age of 32. And I kept building on it upon that. And so it's with that whole concept that I actually wrote my book to teach people how to develop a plan to go from where you're starting from to destination millionaire and beyond.
I love that. Earlier, you mentioned that you applied some principles when you started investing and you continue to apply them. Can you share what those principles are?
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of those principles were rooted in my mentors because they weren't flashy. In fact, I was probably way more flashy than them. And I'd have to be reminded to stop buying all those cars by Mr. Glover from time to time. So they weren't, buy more real estate. They weren't flashy. They were low-key black men that really didn't have anything to prove. And so that within itself said a lot. Right. I talked about Robert, how he lived so modestly. These guys are significantly wealthy. Robert owned a bank. Mr. Glover started a bank, right? Created a bank in our community. So some of those principles about frugality and about patience and about curbing your self-indulgence of things. Because you look at them and you say, well, why did they do that? Yeah, they had great homes. Why did they pour themselves into those things? It's because they were mature enough to understand that those material things weren't the source of their happiness, right? And so often in our community, as kids, we're seeing actors and stars and rappers and people appearing to live their best life, appearing to have everything in their lives and thinking that, wow, if I could just get that, I'd be happy. And I dig into this in my book that material things are never the source of happiness. And so that principle is important and it carried through in my investing. Why? Because I never expected unreasonable returns. If I can get a 7% return or a 10% return on investment, that's doing outstanding. That keeps me from trying to be lured by investing in things like crypto or these different things that are promising, to double and triple and quadruple your returns. It's just not sustainable. It's not consistent. And 9 times out of 10, it's not real. So those mindset things have kept me in check and kept me patient while I steadily build upon my wealth.
On the 30 to Life podcast, you talked about the 6 levels of wealth. What are those 6 levels?
Well, there's 6 levels of wealth, and these are ones I created on my own. And my ghostwriter and I, we fought back and forth about it. And we did because he was like, well, Cedric, they're not absolute. I said, yeah, I understand that, Michael. I said, but there's no real definition for these. So in order to create a destination, we need to basically create some level of wealth aspiration. And so this is the way I look at it. And so I don't care if it's anybody else's rule, but this is how I look at it. And so the first level is financial comfort. And financial comfort in my mind is defined by that you're going along in life, you're going to retire by 65, and by 65, you'll be financially independent. Your lifestyle will be covered by either your pension or by Social Security or a combination of therefore, or by money that you have invested, and you're living a comfortable life. You have all the necessities in life, and you're at peace with your life, and that happens by age of 65. You're in peace for that. And then there's financial independence. Financial independence is when your assets or your pension or any of your income producing vehicles generate enough income to cover your lifestyle and significantly more. And that's financial independence. And then there's the millionaire. A millionaire is a person who has a net worth of 1 million. And that means that their sum of their assets minus the sum of their liabilities equals $1 million. The tricky thing is you can have a net worth of 1 million, but still not be financially independent. There's a lot of people who have a net worth of $1 million, but they still got to go to work. Financially independent people don't have to go to work. And so beyond becoming a millionaire, then there's what I consider rich. And this is the beginning of where rich starts. And rich starts where you have $1 million in liquid cash. You have a net worth of $5 million, and you are financially independent in that your assets, the income you get from your assets or whatever your income vehicles are, covers your lifestyle. And so that's where rich starts. And it goes up to $99 million in net worth. And then there's what I call the ultra rich. That's $100 million in net worth with $10 million in liquid cash and financially independent. And that goes from 100 million to $1 billion, where I call a billionaire. So the reason why I do this is because in my system that it's important that I talk about, let's document your starting point. Let's see where you are. Let's see how much income. Let's see what your net worth is. Let's see how much income your assets are producing for you. Let's see how much sustainable income you have already that you don't have to work for. Because the name of the game is to get your assets to do the work, not you. So we document your starting point, and then we want to document your end game. And your end game is that point in your life where you can choose not to work anymore, where you can start dedicating your gifts and your talents to the things that bring you the most happiness and joy, and not necessarily for money. So I have people document their end game. And in that end game, they're supposed to pick one of those destinations. Do you want to be a millionaire? Do you want to be rich? Do you want to be ultra rich? Do you want to be financially independent or financially comfortable? The reason why this is important is it's an old story, or old passage of the Bible that says, without a vision, a people perish. It's very important that we have a clear vision for what we're doing with our money. And if we don't have a clear vision, there's a good chance that we're going to end up nowhere. We're going to be like a raft out in the ocean that just goes with the waves that pushes us from one place to another. So my thing is that if we're trying to close the racial wealth gap, if we're basically trying to build wealth, if we're trying to create generational wealth, we need a defined destination. And once you hit that destination, you can go to the next level if you want, or you could choose to do something else with your time.
Do you believe that anyone can become rich?
I am a firm believer, and there is evidence time and time again to prove it, that anyone, regardless of your race, regardless of your education, regardless of your financial starting point, can become a millionaire and become rich and beyond if they're willing to make the necessary sacrifices, if they're willing to put in the effort, if they're willing to be consistent. I believe anybody can do that. And time again, it's been proven. Just look at the Forbes 400. Probably nearly over 50% of them are self-made. It's been proven time again, regardless of your color. I've heard the story of Tyler Perry many times, where he basically started from nothing, came from nothing and built wealth. It happens time again. Now you might say, well, he's incredibly talented. He's right, but there's a whole bunch of other millionaires that we don't know that did it, starting from the bottom too. And I happen to be one of them.
For anyone listening or watching the show right now, making maybe $40,000 a year, how should they go about making it happen?
Well, first of all, they should get my book, because my book talks about the 8 steps of my Millionaire Money Moves process. And the first step of that process is plan. You have to have a plan. And part of that plan is you're going to create what I call your Millionaire Money Moves master plan. And the first step in that plan, after you document your current income and your net worth plan and your objective of how you're going to grow your net worth, is your earn plan. You have to have a plan for how am I going to increase my earnings, because I got to have fuel for my rocket. And so there are several ways I talk in my book about increasing your earning from your main hustle, which is your job, and getting income from your side hustle, to invariably take the income from your main hustle and your side hustle and put it into your investment hustle, so that one day your investment hustle will do all the work. That's the process. So as long as you're willing to work hard, and I'm telling you, there's no one in this world that makes over $1 million a year or makes over $500,000 a year that's not making extreme sacrifices of their time and their effort to get there. I mean, you look at football players having to travel state to state within a weekly basis. They're very committed to the process. A lot of work. You look at actors that have to go to different countries at various times for years sometimes. You look at anybody. You look at people on Wall Street. You look at consultants. You look at anybody. So that's the first thing within your mindset that you have to accept, that it's going to take a lot of effort. And if you're not willing, like I said, anybody can do it if you're willing to put the effort in. If you're not willing to put the effort in, there's nothing anyone can do for you. So that's the first step. And after you do that, then it's a matter of what you do with that additional income. But the name of the game is you have to put extreme effort in it. Live extremely frugal so that you can maximize that capital and invest as much as you can intensely and consistently over time, and you'll get there.
In Business Insider, you talked about 5 steps to building Black wealth, right? One of the steps is leveraging entrepreneurship. Do you believe that we should all be entrepreneurs?
I believe that entrepreneurship is a very powerful way of building wealth. Why? Because entrepreneurs have an ability to make an extreme amount of money through their business, through retained earnings, through profits. And so that gives you an edge. And out of that, you could leverage through leveraging your employees or leveraging products or whatever, you're able to grow your sales and increase your profits. But there are many people that are 9-to-5 millionaires. One of my little brothers, who I've been mentoring since college, is one of those guys. He owns over 36 apartment units, and he works as an executive director at a software company out of San Francisco. So the whole point is there are some people who work in their company and they continue to buy their company stock, or they buy other company stocks. So the whole point is there are so many different ways in this country to do it. There are some people, like one of my frat brothers in college, who's been a DJ. He used to DJ our frat parties, and now he still DJs. And now he's got other DJs working for him, but he still works 9 to 5. So on the weekends and evenings, he's out there promoting his DJ. In fact, he came to the Black Wealth Summit because I had to have him DJ, because that was our plan back in the day, that when I do the summit, that he's going to be over there spinning. So the whole point is there are so many ways. And that's why I wrote the book. That's why I'm out here trying to provide real life practical solutions for our people so that they can stay focused. A lot of times we lose focus because it's not moving fast enough. But building wealth is a slow process.
You mentioned that you have 3 kids, right?
Yes. I actually have 4. I have a stepdaughter that I raised, so I claim that I have 4 kids.
So you have 4 kids.
Yeah.
What are some of the pieces of advice that you've shared with them so that they are prepared to maintain and expand the generational wealth?
It's really interesting because I really did not. We talked about stuff. I made sure they understood a balance sheet and stuff like that. But really what it is like, I was divorced when my kids were 7, and they would spend their summers with me and we would travel together. That was my way of, I'm saying, okay, if we have limited time, we're going to make it memorable. So we traveled a lot and we spent time traveling and those types of things. But really what they saw was what James Baldwin really talked about. He has a quote that says, children have never been very good at listening to their elders, but they've never failed to imitate them. So what happens is my kids were imitating me and I didn't even know it. My kids are really good with money. One's getting his master's in finance at the Ohio State University. The other one's finishing his undergraduate degree. He's more into rap and that stuff, and he's getting his degree in marketing. A really good salesman. And the other one wants to be a doctor. He's getting into medical school. But they're very interested in investing. They never got into that tennis shoe thing where they sit outside all night waiting for tennis shoes to be sold. They just never tripped on things. And they lived with their mom in Ohio, but they lived a middle-class, modest life. I didn't buy them everything I could afford to buy them, but they didn't have to pay for their college either. And they didn't have to worry about how their college was going to get paid, but they just didn't develop that thirst for these things. So I think that how parents live their own life is number one, the most important thing. And at the same time, when you get a chance to educate them about wealth, but the most important thing is not really about to do with money. It's really the mindset stuff. See, the mindset piece is the hardest piece to get in the journey. My book is about 3 things. It's about developing a millionaire mindset, which is the offense. It's adopting millionaire values, which I call the defense. And it's making millionaire money moves, which is the playbook. And so these things have to work in concert with each other, or else nothing happens. Because if you don't have the right mindset and value set, you can't make millionaire money moves consistent long enough to have an impact. So they all have to work, and they have to be a continuous improvement process throughout it. And as we as African Americans, because our cultural experiences, where we come from, how our mindsets are shaped, we have more work to do. We have a lot more work to do in that mindset department than the others. And that's why it takes us so much longer and it's so much harder for us.
You're also a real estate investor. Tell me about your real estate journey. What do you invest in? When did you start?
Well, my first piece of property I bought was coming right out of college. I worked a consulting job for a plastic surgeon while I was in school. All this is in the book. And he paid me $25 an hour. I saved $7,000 coming out of college, or $6,000 to $7,000. Bought my first piece of property in Pacoima, California, which is the barrio, which is the Mexican ghetto there at the time, right around the corner from where Rodney King got beat up back in the 90s. And so I bought that condo for $105,000, $115,000, because that's what I could afford. And then after that, I bought my first house at the age of 28, and I built the house. But then after that, in 2003, after reading actually Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which really inspired me, but it didn't give me a clear roadmap, I bought my first piece of multifamily property in Jersey City, New Jersey, and was able to cash flow it. And I bought my second one in Washington, D.C. a month later. Then I bought my third one in Jersey City, another apartment building. And then I bought my first commercial piece of property or office building in 2005, where I moved my staff. And I continue to buy it. So now I own other commercial properties that I'm buying and flipping into salon studios. I own land in various places. So I really like real estate because it's pretty straightforward. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand that you got to rent it out for more than what your payments are. And it's also one of those things, it's a gift that keeps giving. It always appreciates slowly, but it's a great investment class.
Is there anything that you wish you had known earlier on your journey as a real estate investor that you can share with the dreamers?
Oh, yes. What I wish I would have done earlier, and I wrote this in my book to college students, is that when I came out, I bought a condo right out of college. I wish I would have bought a duplex or a threeplex. And so I'm telling college students when they graduate from college, their first piece of property, and my assistant, she's doing this playbook as we speak, should be a multifamily, and then rent out every piece of thing you can. Meaning, like, you just take one room, you rent out the room, you rent out the other apartments to where you live rent free. And then you keep saving your money for the next thing. And then when you're ready, you go buy the next thing and potentially take money out of this property and to continue to build. Why? Because multifamilies are income producing properties. They're valued based on their cap rate or their net operating income. And so they're valued differently than a single family home, which is subjected to the economic forces of comparable prices in the neighborhood. So if you have a multifamily, it's based on the income that you're able to generate. So I would have gotten started there sooner, and that would have catapulted my wealth growth. The other thing I would have done differently is that I was still coming out of school, still dealing with my own image challenges. I didn't feel like it was a challenge there, but I was a sharp dresser, best dressed in high school, really trying to make a statement about who I was by my fine clothing. Came out of college wearing Hugo Boss suits and Ferragamo shoes. I'm working at a laboratory dressed like I'm on Wall Street when everybody else is wearing jeans and button-down shirts and tennis shoes. You get what I'm saying? I'm driving a BMW like I'm an executive because I'm projecting this desire for something that I wanted or something that I thought was important. And we all our young people are, and some of our older people are fighting for that kind of respect. And so we overcompensate by putting our money into those things. But what we should do is keep our self-esteem in check and make sure that our net worth is the definition of our real self-worth, as opposed to what people think about us or how they judge us. So I was struggling with that. That's one thing I would have changed.
I know you also invest in private equity, and
Yes.
most dreamers listening probably don't even know what private equity is, what it is, and how do you qualify to invest
Right.
in?
Well, private equity falls under the umbrella of what they call alternative investments. And alternative investments are investments as an angel investor, venture capitalist, hedge funds, and private equity. And in order to invest in alternative investments, you have to meet certain IRS requirements and be considered an accredited investor. And so there are things like income requirements, like you have to have a certain income of either $300,000 and a net worth of over $1 million without not including your personal residence and things like that. So you can look up the details of that. The reason why those requirements are there is to try to protect investors who are not financially positioned to invest in riskier things, because alternative investments can be very risky. You can lose all of your money and they're not regulated by the exchange. So the whole point is that you have to be careful when you do that. So private equity comes in so many different forms. And that's basically saying I'm getting private money from high net worth individuals or institutions, and I'm putting that money to work in other things, either by providing debt financing for companies, or either through providing capital for startups, or by buying companies and combining them to create more value. So it's a lot of different things. I do it with apartment syndications, where I've invested in 400 unit apartment buildings with a firm that I work with out of Miami. And it's been an interesting run. And I also invite African Americans that I know that qualify to invest there too. Why do you do it? Because you get higher return. We get guaranteed returns. We're investing in real high quality properties, 400 unit, $40, $60 million apartment buildings. And you're meeting a lot of different people as a result of that process. And what you're doing is you're diversifying your portfolio.
So the objective of private equity is to earn a bigger return, and therefore you're taking on bigger risks than you would normally take as a result of that. And so a lot of African Americans have not been exposed to private equity opportunities or private equity deals, but we're getting more and more exposed to it, and we're seeing more and more people go in this direction. So it's kind of exciting. It's one of those things that as you grow in your investable capital and you continue to diversify your portfolio, that you do want to take on some private equity type of deals. And I think what I was talking about before was how I diversify my portfolio. Some things I invest in private equity. I also own my own properties as well. I've invested in a rum factory in DC that creates rum, and they have a lounge on the waterfront in Washington, DC. I've invested in software companies as well as my own entrepreneurial business. One of the things that I try to promote within people is to be extremely diversified in so many different levels. That's how you hedge yourself against losses, because sometimes, like right now, real estate rents are up. And so it's a great thing, and stocks are down. So you can have different things going on, but it always has you potentially winning. And so there are other people like I've been hearing Robert Kiyosaki and Grant Cardone who are real estate guys talk down on the stock market. Well, in reality, the stock market has done better than real estate significantly over the years. So the reality is you want to be in everything, every potential type of investment vehicle you want to eventually have. In my book, I have this investment ladder that tells you as you grow your capital, the things that you can invest in to get from what I call a level 1 investor to a level 7 investor who is invested in private equity.
Your book, Why Should White Guys Have All the Wealth, is out right now. Where can people buy it?
Well, you can pre-order it right now at Barnes & Noble, Target, even Amazon.com has it. I think their link is acting up for all pre-orders right now. But it's available on those platforms, and it will be officially released January 17th. I actually have 2 books. This book is the main book, and it talks about the concept and my wealth building system. And I have another book called The Millionaire Money Moves Investment Supplemental Guide, which is 4 chapters that talks about my philosophy on investing in securities, real estate, my philosophies investing in entrepreneurship, as well as alternative investments.
Perfect. So I always end the interview with a round of rapid fire questions.
Sure.
Tell me about a book that changed your perspective on life.
What Makes the Great Great by Dennis Kimbrough.
What's one life lesson you learned the hard way?
Patience is a virtue.
What's one thing about money you wish you could tell your younger self?
The one thing is to invest all the time, every month, every paycheck, consistently throughout your life.
What's the best investment in yourself you've made so far?
Starting my business.
Filling the blank in 3 words or less. Money to me is
Freedom.
What do you want your legacy to be?
That I change the mindset of our people around their money.
Well, Cedric, it's been really a pleasure having you on the show. As I mentioned before we started recording, I feel like your story is one that we just don't hear about enough in our community. So thank you for coming on and sharing your tips and your knowledge with the dreamers. And please tell the dreamers where they can find you.
Hey, you can find me at cedricnash.com, or you can find me on my Instagram page at Millionaire Money Moves. Hopefully I'll see you there. I give weekly free advice. So join our Thursday Ask Your Millionaire Mentor segment, which we're doing tonight at 6:30.
Love it. Well, thank you so much, Cedric.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity.